Are you recording for yourself? Okay, I have to share my screen here, just 1 minute. That's the one. Okay, I'm gonna kind of go through this like we've been doing with the others, starting with chapter 20, which gets us to so far the Namathite. We're back to Joe Namath's relatives. He's going to reply to Job's latest round, but let me remind you what happened way back in chapter 13. Job said, "I'm fed up with you three. I'm not getting anywhere with you. I'm going to go directly to God." And can he do that? And he said, "Well, I'm not getting anywhere, so I'm going to do it." So Job made a request to God. He prayed to God and said, "God, could you ease my suffering so we can talk?" So there was one request. And God, come to me, but please don't blow me away. Don't overwhelm me. Don't kill me with your awesome holy presence. So those were the two conditions that Job offered his request under. And then he kind of gave God some options in his prayer way back in chapter 13. God, since I'm just me and you're God, you can call to me and I'll respond to you. That would be great. Or if you want, I'll speak first and you can answer me. Then we get to two specific questions that he has for God. Show me the sins that my friends are saying are the cause of my suffering. And God, please tell me why you seem to be my enemy. So there's Job's request that he made in chapter 13. We're about to embark on chapter 20. Welcome. Oh, no. Glad you're here. And
50 cents.
I know. Oh, that's all.
so we are now several chapters removed from that. And I just wanted to keep that in mind, that Job's prayer is still hanging out there in the valley. So Zophar, the Nabothite, comes up, and if we're ready to jump in on chapter 20, does anyone else want to start reading at chapter 20 and take it through? Just do it nice and loud, and if you can, be really animated.
I can.
Animated.
Animate.
Animated.
Get up on the table.
Yeah.
Then so far.
Yes, well, and please do. And then but I will probably stop you several times along the way.
Or someone pass like Joe Namath does every now and then.
Yes, don't be disturbed or don't be daunted. You can just pick it up when I'm done adding whatever I asked.
And so far, the Namathite replied, "My troubled thoughts prompt me to answer because I am greatly disturbed. I hear a rebuke that dishonors me, and my understanding inspires me to reply. Surely you know how it has been from of old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth of the wicked is brief, the joy of the godless lasts but a moment."
Okay, let's stop. Put a thumb there. You'll start again, Jim, at verse 6.
Okay.
So now Zophar has heard Job's saying, "You see it yourselves, the wicked prosper." So Zophar is trying to take a different tack. Well, yes, but it's only for a brief time. I mean, it doesn't last. All right, he's going to go on with that, and we'll see if we agree with that or not. But this is Zophar trying to come back at Job in a different way. So verse 6, please, Jim.
Though the pride of the godless person reaches to the heavens and his head touches the clouds, he will perish forever, like his own dung. Those who have seen him will say, "Where is he?" Like a dream he flies away, no more to be found, vanished like a vision of the night. The eye that saw him will not see again. His place will look on him no more. His children must make amends to the poor. His own hands must give back his wealth. The youthful vigor that fills his bones will lie with him in the dust. Though evil is sweet in his mouth and he hides it under his tongue, though he cannot bear to let it go and lest it linger in his mouth.
Okay, we'll stop there and then we'll pick up in just a moment. In this case, I think I love Ethel's translation in the NLT. You did help to translate that, didn't you? I figured that's one of the reasons
You bet.
So they enjoyed the sweet taste of wickedness letting it melt under their tongue. How many of you could see how poetically temptation is written in that way? I mean, it's really a great detail and very vivid. Okay, so let's go. He's still going to say, but it doesn't last. Go ahead, Jim, at verse 14.
Okay. Yet his food will turn sour in the stomach. It will become the venom of serpents within him. He will spit out the riches he swallowed. God will make his stomach vomit them up. He will suck the poison of serpents. The fangs of an adder will kill him. He will not enjoy the streams, the rivers flowing with honey and cream. What he toiled for, he must give back uneaten. He will not enjoy the profit from his trading, for he has oppressed the poor and left them destitute. He has seized houses he did not build. Surely he'll have no respite from his craving. He cannot save himself by his treasure. Nothing is left for him to devour. His prosperity will not endure. In the midst of his plenty, distress will overtake him. The full force of misery will come upon him. When he has filled his belly, God will vent his burning anger against him and rain down his blows on him. Though he flees from iron weapon, a bronze-tipped arrow pierces him. He pulls it out of his back, the gleaming point out of his liver. Terrors will come over him. Total darkness lies in wait for his treasures. A fire unfanned will consume him and devour what is left in his tent. The heavens will expose his guilt. The earth will rise up against him. A flood will carry off his house, rushing waters on the day of God's wrath. Such is the fate God allots the wicked, the heritage appointed for them by God.
Yay, Zophar.
We know so much.
He's done with his song in the musical. It's, we clap after each song in the musical. I mean, he really let him have it there. He was very figurative in his language, very illustrative. And his point started out as, well, the wicked, yeah, sometimes they get away with it, but not for long. And then he starts talking about what's going to happen. He'll be gone. The people will look for him. You won't be there anymore. The wicked one will just disappear. And that's part of the theology then. So they're still trying to look back at that the Psalm 1 theology that says that those who follow the advice of the wicked will come to ruin. Bad things will happen to them. Well, there's truth there. We know that. But Job is saying, I don't see that working in the way that Psalm 1 seems to say it works. I'm with Jeremiah chapter 12. Why, God, do the wicked prosper? So far saying, well, they'll come to an end. You wait and see. Now, what's a problem with that theology that they're struggling with? If the wicked die and lose everything and they go to the place of the dead and they're just gone forever, their memory fades. Okay, well, that's in Zophar's mind, that's justice. They lost everything, they died. Any problems with real life in that view? I don't know if I can lead you.
Everybody would die.
Bingo, yes, Pam. Well, that's what happens to everybody. I mean, is that fair? So now here's what one of the things that they're struggling with that we can kind of put in our minds. In the theology that they had, you could have been the most virtuous person in the world, Job. You could have been wicked, and your circumstances in life may not have been commensurate with the way you lived. And what happens when you die? It's all equal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the point? Why be pious? Why be law-abiding when it's all going to come to the same place? You go to Sheol, which is a place of nothingness. You don't exist anymore. You're gone. And if you didn't have male heirs, boom, your whole family bloodline's gone forever to be forgotten. Well, that's what's happening to Job. And so that's what they're struggling with in their theology. Psalm 1 theology can get you a great deal of understanding. But now there's discontent with that. God got them this far. And Job, I'm arguing, plus other events, are leading to something greater. So I don't know if I'm over belaboring the point. But that's where I think they're arguing here. So any observations or questions before we go on? That was great reading, by the way, Jim.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You can read anything. All right, so Job now is going to take over. Would someone like to read chapter 21 and try to give Job's voice? But you have to do it as if you're suffering greatly.
Up with M&Ms.
So pinch yourself. But Job answered and said, hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolations. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken. Mock on. As for me, is my complaint of man? And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled?
Okay, stop there for a moment. Okay, so in the King James, he's saying the spirit is stirred up. Right? In many of the other translations, it says impatient. All right. So, and I think troubled probably is closer to the author's meaning. Both translations can be used if you are in the camp that says, you know, Job sinned, so this is all, you know, there's no sinless human. And this was a literal account. Then some people want to point to that and say, see, he was impatient, so he's sinful. I think the translation leads us in that way and mistakenly, because I think it's a fictional account of a real person like George Washington and the cherry tree. But I think the author is going to reaffirm, as he did in the beginning, Job remained blameless, or else the story doesn't work. So you can take impatient or troubled however you like. I'm going to maintain or take the position that it wasn't sinful. And we'll see what God says in the end. Okay, would you like to continue, please, at 5, please?
Mark me and be astonished, and lay your hand upon your mouth. Even when I remember, I am afraid, and trembling taken hold on my flesh. Therefore do the wicked live. Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, are mighty in power. Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth and faileth not.
I love that.
Right.
All right, so their animals are top notch. The evil are getting away with everything. Go ahead.
Their cow calveth and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice in the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of the ways.
Okay, so can you see the argument that's happening here? Job is saying, you know as well as I do, the wicked prosper sometimes, and their children go on and they enjoy their grandchildren, and it just continues, and they seem to have great wealth. And yes, they die, but so do we all. And so what happens when they get away with it? They say, we don't need you, God. We don't want anything to do with you. Why should we obey God? What good will it do us when we all end up in the same place? So that reiterates one of the issues that they're dealing with theologically in this period. Please continue.
Okay, was it 14 at the end? 15. What is the Almighty that he should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Lo, their good is not in their hands. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. How oft is the candle of the wicked put out? And how oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrow in his anger. They are as stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his mouse is cut off in the midst? Shall any teach God knowledge? seeing he judges those that are high. One death is the full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. And another death in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down like the dust, and the worms shall cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts, and the devices which are wrongfully imagined against me. For ye say, where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places in the wicked? Have ye not asked them that to go by the way? And do ye not know their tokens?
Where are we at?
Should be 29.
Okay, you can, yeah.
Okay,
let's
and the
go.
wicked is, I had to turn the page. That the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction. They shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. Who shall declare his way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? Yet shall he be brought to the grave, and shall remain in the tomb. The clods of the valley shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. How then comfort ye me in vain, seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood.
Thank you, well done. Good job, Joe. Now, the language in the King James is eloquent. Sometimes it's thick for us. So were you able to, in your own translation, read along and say, oh, I get what they're saying? Okay. So we don't have to go back over a lot of it, but I do want to look at 26. Well, and what leads up to it. Job is again restating what I've said. He could be pious and he could be wicked, and they all end up buried in the same dust. And then Hollywood special effects, both eaten by the same maggots. All right, and the people get grossed out like we do. So, so Job has been very vociferous in that argument, and he's bringing up not only that he is suffering, he's bringing up this theological piece that everybody can be thinking of. Yeah, what is this all about? I mean, how does it work? For them, again, eternal life wasn't individual, it was your bloodline. If you had male heirs to carry it on. Okay, so now we get Eliphaz again, responding in 22. And are you okay plowing on like this? Are we following along? Okay, would someone like to be Eliphaz? Please sound arrogant.
I'm gonna try.
Okay,
Can a man be of benefit to God? Can even a wise person benefit him? What pleasure would it give the Almighty if you were righteous? What would he gain if your ways were blameless? Is it for your piety that he rebukes you and brings charges against you? Is not your wickedness great? Are not your sins endless? You demanded security from your relatives for no reason. You stripped people of their clothing, leaving them naked.
okay, I have to stop here because now Eliphaz is accusing Job of things with no evidence, right? And the testimony of one person is not valid in their culture. But it reminds me of an injustice of 6th grade that I still cannot let go. Mark Boughton. Mark Boughton. We had, you remember Mark Boughton? Yeah, he was like one of the.
Never wanted.
He was a goody two-shoe. Well, we ended up opposing one another in a class where we had to. It was a reenactment of something like the Salem witch trials, and I was on the side of acquitting this person, and Mark Boughton was. And so we're presenting our arguments, and I'm floundering, and Mark Boughton comes up with, and she's left-handed. Oh, where'd you come up with that? I didn't see that in the book. He was making up things, and he won. Mark Boughton won in my 6th grade class and convicted the witch trial, and I've never gotten over it because he made things up. It wasn't the only thing. He made up other stuff.
You still
And the
keep in touch
teacher-
with him? You still keep in touch with?
No,
him?
I'm sorry. I got-
Wait till you go to a class reunion.
All right, so, well, at least I aired that out. Now. But listen to what Eliphaz is gonna say about Job. And if it's not made up out of whole cloth, what is it? So start again at 6, please.
That's it, at 7.
At 7.
You gave no water to the weary, and you withheld food from the hungry. Though you were a powerful man, owning land, an honored man, living on it. And you sent widows away empty-handed and broke the strength of the fatherless. That is why snares are all around you, why sudden peril terrifies you, why it is so dark you cannot see, and why a flood of water covers you. Is not God in the heights of heaven? And see how lofty are the highest stars. Yet you say, what does God know? Does he judge through such darkness? Thick clouds veil him, so he does not see us as he goes about in the vaulted heavens. Will you keep to the old path that the wicked have trod? They were carried off before their time, their foundations washed away by the flood. They said to God, leave us alone. What can the Almighty do to us? Yet it was he who filled their houses with good things. So I stand aloof from the plans of the wicked. The righteous see their ruin and rejoice. The innocent mock them, saying, surely our foes are destroyed, and fire devours their wealth. Submit to God and be at peace with him. In this way, prosperity will come to you. Accept instruction from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove wickedness from your tent and assign your nuggets to the dust, your gold of Ophir to the rocks and the ravines, then the Almighty God will be your gold, the choicest silver for you. Surely then you will find delight in the Almighty and will lift up all your face to God. You will pray to him and he will hear you, and you will fulfill your vows. What you decide on will be done, and light will shine on your ways. When people are brought low and you say, lift them up, then he will save the downcast. He will deliver even one who is not innocent, who will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands.
Okay, so he spends the first part saying all of these accusations, and his only evidence, which is not evidence, is you're suffering so badly, I can just conclude you've done all these things. That still happens. Sometimes we see bad things happen to a person or a group of people. We say, what goes around comes around. You had it coming. Karma. That's the way it works. You had it coming. And the hard part is sometimes it's true. Sometimes our actions bring consequences upon us. But is that God's justice? If you go that much further, remember the AIDS epidemic, and evangelicals on TV said this is God's punishment on that community of those who are spreading AIDS. You could tie the disease and its spread to its consequences biologically, but they were going on and saying this is God's judgment. And they were doing so like Eliphaz was. Well, these bad things are happening, so I just conclude that God's judging you. And we'll see what God says about that. It's very difficult because there's, again, they can point to things that say, we see how these consequences happen, cause and effect. So it's hard to stand against that when someone is very eloquent, like Mark Boughton.
Or can I,
Yes, please.
gonna do kind of like what you did. The one thing that bothers me, okay, in the movie, I believe it's A Wonderful Life with James Stewart, and you have John Barrymore. The one thing that irritates me to no end is that John Barrymore takes that money. Okay, now, all the friends and everybody comes up and helps him out. Wonderful. But John Barrymore gets away with it. And that'll hurt me to know.
Yes, yeah, he got away with it. Oh, we can't stand that. Oh, my God. And you probably then were you a writer for Saturday Night Live?
Well, I'd like to be.
Back in the days of Peter Carnegie on Saturday Night Live, they actually, they actually finished the ending to that.
Oh,
And so Dana Carvey and others came into John Barrymore, what was his name? Potter?
Potter.
Potter.
mhm.
They came into his office and they meted out justice. They beat the
Yay.
tar out of him on Saturday Night Live.
So you again, okay, but still, I'd say it'd be nice to get the money back.
I don't know if they took the money back or not, but they did mete out their own vigilante justice against him. So
They had their
so
own
if you find some satisfaction in that.
Yeah, that feel a little
Saturday
bit.
Night Live and see if that works. So then he switches from accusing him based on, well, you're suffering so much, I can make these accusations, they must be true. To, but if you simply go to God and pray and purify and confess and sacrifice, you know, even sinners later in your life will be rescued by your pure hands. So you still have hope, Job. Again, there's truth in that, but yikes. So they're kind of talking past one another a little bit here.
Sorry about that.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna do 23 here as Job. So here we go on chapter 23. Then Job spoke again. Oh my goodness, really? Have we not heard enough? And if this is monotonous, then say, why is this so monotonous? Why would the writer do that? Lots of reasons. First of all, he makes it very flowery because he's presenting it as entertainment as well as teaching. But if it drags on and on and on, try and grasp what lesson is happening here. And we'll come to that later. Why would there be a lesson in this dragging on and on? My complaint today is still a bitter one. And I try hard not to groan loud. Well, Job, if this is what happens when you try hard not to groan loud, I'd sure hate to see what would happen if you weren't trying. If only I knew where to find God, I would go to his court and I would lay out my case and present my arguments. Then I would listen to his reply, which I've already asked for 7 chapters ago or 10 chapters ago. Would he use his great power to argue with me? No. He would give me a fair hearing, just like Jeremiah said, God, you've always been just, so answer me this one. Honest people can reason with God, so I would be forever acquitted by my judge. I go, and now poetic, here's poetic parallelism. I go east, but he is not there. I go west, but I cannot find him. I do not see him in the north, for he is hidden. I look to the south, but he is concealed. God's nowhere to be found, according to Job. But he knows where I'm going. And when he tests me, I will come out as pure gold. Right? And again, the friends would scoff at that. But this is Job insisting on his innocence. For I have stayed on God's paths. I have followed his ways and not turned aside. I've not departed from his commands, but have treasured his words more than daily food. But once he has made a decision, who can change his mind? Whatever God wants to do, he does. So he will do to me whatever he has planned. He controls my destiny. Well, again, we have truth in that theology. We still believe in that God is sovereign. But Job is struggling with the results that he sees, the limited picture that he has as a human. No wonder I'm so terrified in his presence. When I think of it, terror grips me. God has made me sick at heart, and the Almighty has terrified me. Darkness is all around me. Thick, impenetrable darkness is everywhere. If you've ever had a time called the dark night of the soul, in your faith life, when you have felt like, I think, totally cut off from God. I don't even know if this was ever a real thing. God's nowhere to be found. It's a famous phenomenon for faithful people that oftentimes you can encounter what has been referred to as a dark night of the soul, where you feel completely cut off from God. My God, why have you forsaken me? Were you ever there in the first place? And it can, I don't know if I've been through it as the classic definition, but I feel like I've at least approached it. at periods in my life. And not to say that others haven't hit the depths even much more deeply, but I think I know something of what is being said there. So when he says the thick impenetrable darkness is all around me, I've been faithful all my life, but I can't find God north, south, east, or west. Chapter 24, why doesn't the Almighty bring the wicked to judgment? Right? Joy? I
Yes,
mean,
sir.
good Lord, Potter got away with it. Why must the godly wait for him in vain? By the way, I want to say that the writer of It's a Wonderful Life, that's a great literary technique. Don't resolve everything. Let the people take away something to stick in their craw or to think about or write their own ending to.
Only been 76 years.
Evil people steal land by moving the boundary markers. Now there's a good one. I was thinking about that. How did they didn't have sophisticated GPS. They couldn't lay out lot lines. So what did they do to mark their territory? Well, there'd be a stone, there'd be, and so, hey, you know what? It's been a drought. Move the stone 10 feet this year. You won't see a spot where the grass wasn't, so I'll just move it over. And if I do that every 5 years when we have a drought, I can pick up a lot of land there. Can you imagine people, doing that to their neighbors? Of course. They steal livestock and put them in their own pastures. That's a hanging offense. They take the orphan's donkey and demand the widow's ox as security for a loan. The poor are pushed off the path. The needy must hide together for safety. Well, whatever Job has said, the people in the audience are able to resonate with this. Yeah, I've seen that happen. So whatever's happening, they are being confronted with this idea, where is God's justice? Do I even know where God is? How does this work? What's going on? I've seen this stuff happen, or I may have been guilty of it myself. Like wild donkeys in the wilderness, the poor must spend all their time looking for food, searching even in the desert for food for their children. They harvest a field they do not own and glean the vineyards of the wicked. Okay, so let me translate that a little bit. Remember in Ruth, when Boaz, who was wealthy, had servants harvesting the fields, and he was following the teachings of the Old Testament law. Don't harvest everything. Don't pick up every last bit of grain. Don't make your servants do it perfectly. Leave a little bit. Why? So that the widow and the orphan and the foreigner can come in and pick over the leftovers. And so that's what he's saying. The poor are stuck with that. They have to go and hope that the harvest has left something behind for them. All night they lie naked in the cold without clothing or covering. They are soaked by mountain showers, and they huddle against the rocks for want of a home. The wicked snatch a widow's child from her breast, taking the baby as security for a loan. Boy, human wickedness knows no bounds. We know that, unfortunately. The poor must go about naked without any clothing. They harvest food for others while they themselves are starving. They press out olive oil without being allowed to taste it. They tread in the winepress as they suffer from thirst. You can imagine the slaves, the servants, pressing the grapes and watching the juice flow, but they can't, if they were to partake of it, that would be a punishable offense. The groans of the dying rise from the city, and the wounded cry for help, yet God ignores their moaning. Can Job say that? Well, I was told once, and I've done a little bit with this, I wish I'd have gotten more into it, to use of ventriloquism. I've done it, and once in a while I've done it well, most of the time not. But one of the things that ventriloquists love when they do their act, especially comedians, is things that can't be said, a puppet can say.
Yeah.
Can he say that? Well, I didn't say it. He said it.
Yeah.
So you can really get away with it, and that's what I think is happening here. The story is, if you will, the ventriloquist puppet. You can't say these things if you're sitting at the city gate or if you're at synagogue. But if you're listening to a story like this, you can, and the people are glad because, I was thinking that too. I was struggling with that too. Wicked people rebel against the light. They refuse to acknowledge its paths or stay in its ways. The murderer rises early in the dawn to kill the poor and needy, and at night he is a thief. The adulterer waits for twilight, saying, no one will see me then. He hides his face so no one knows him. Thieves break into houses at night and sleep in the daytime. They're not acquainted with the light. The black night is their morning. They ally themselves with the terrors of the darkness. But they disappear like foam down a river. Everything they own is cursed, and they are afraid to enter their own vineyards. The grave consumes sinners, just as drought and heat consume snow. So yes, they'll come to their end, but that's where we're all going, according to our theology. More special effects. Their own mothers will forget them. Maggots will find them sweet to eat. No one will remember them. Wicked people are broken like a tree in the storm. They cheat the woman who has no son to help her. They refuse to help the needy widow. God in his power drags away the rich. They may rise high, but they have no assurance of life. They may be allowed to live in security, but God is always watching them. And though they are great now, in a moment they will be gone like all the others. And again, Job's complaining. Didn't matter if they were good or bad. Same thing happened. Cut off like heads of grain. Can anyone claim otherwise? Who can prove me wrong? The end. No, unfortunately not the end. Bildad's going to give it a go. So Bildad's going to try and prove him wrong here. All right, so here we are, and we're doing okay. We're at chapter 25. I want to get through 29. So would someone, with your arrogance in full bloom, read Bildad the Shuhite's part?
Then Bildad the Shuhite replied, dominion and awe belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heaven. Can his forces be numbered? Upon whom does his light not rise? How then can a man be righteous before God? How can one born of woman be pure? If even the moon is not bright and the stars are not pure in his eyes, how much less man who is but a maggot, a son of man who is only a worm?
Oh my gosh, a short chapter?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was waiting.
you didn't do that. So now, look at the comparison. We've seen the special effects. I mean, maggots are as bad as it gets in this. Well, now it says we may as well be maggots. What are people? John Calvin was accused of saying that. I think he did, saying basically humans are 5-foot worms. That's what. At one point, when you can look at humanity that way, but our theology says we are the crown of creation. God made us a little lower than the angels. So you've got this tension going on. Which is it, God? We seem to be treated like maggots. What's the deal? All right, I'm going to go back to being Job 26. How have you helped the powerless? How have you saved the weak? And he's talking to his friends here. How have you enlightened my stupidity? What wise advice have you offered? Where have you gotten all these wise sayings? Whose spirit speaks through you? Psalm 1, among other things, my grandfather and grandmother. The dead tremble, those who live beneath the waters. Oh, on Sunday, we're gonna read Genesis chapter 1. Okay. And talk about their concept of what the cosmology looked like. It's beautiful. It's not scientifically accurate, but it's beautiful for their understanding. The underworld is naked in God's presence. The place of destruction is uncovered for God. God stretches the northern sky over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. He wraps the rain in his thick clouds, and the clouds burst. He covers the face of the moon, shining with the clouds. He created the horizon when he separated the waters. He set the boundary between day and night, a little allusion to Genesis here and that theology. The foundations of heaven trembled. They shudder at his rebuke. In his power, the sea grew calm. By his skill, he crushed the great sea monster. Now, this is before Jesus calmed the sea, by the way, way before. But God calms the seas. His spirit made the heavens beautiful, and his power pierced the gliding serpent. These are just the beginning of all he does, merely a whisper of God's power. Who then can comprehend the thunder of God's power? Yay, short chapter, but Job continues. 27. I vow by the living God who has taken away my rights, by the Almighty who has embittered my soul, there's parallelism, said the same thing twice. As long as I live, while I have breath from God, that's the only place you get breath. Breath is life, spirit. My lips will speak no evil, and my tongue will speak no lies. I will never concede that you are right. I will defend my integrity until I die. I will maintain my innocence without wavering. My conscience is clear for as long as I live. May my enemy be punished like the wicked. May my adversary like those who do evil. For what hope do the godless have when God cuts them off and takes away their life? Will God listen to their cry when trouble comes upon them? And implied is, has God listened to my cry? We're still in suspense over that. Can they take delight in the Almighty? I do. Can they call to God at any time, like I've been able to do my whole life? I will teach you about God's power. I will not conceal anything about the Almighty. But you've seen all this, yet you say all these useless things. This is what the wicked will receive from God. This is their inheritance from the Almighty. They may have many, many children, but the children will die in war or starve to death. That's what you say. Those who survive will die of plague. Not even their widows will mourn them. Evil people, you say, Zophar, may have piles of money and store it away at mounds of clothing, but the righteous will wear that clothing, and the innocent will divide that. The wicked build houses as fragile as a spider's web, as flimsy as a shelter made of branches. The wicked go to bed rich, but wake to find that all their wealth is gone, you say, Zophar. Terror overwhelms them like a flood, and they are blown away in the storms of the night. The east wind carries them away, and they are gone. It sweeps them away. It whirls down on them without mercy. They struggle to flee from its power, but everyone jeers at them and mocks them. Okay, the east wind. In the Middle East, I don't know how often it happens as a phenomenon, but it certainly did for them in those days. When it comes, you've experienced the haboob here.
Mhm.
All right, if you are driving in that, God help you. And if you're out alone with no shelter, I don't know if it's fine dust here, but where they were, the wind is whipping sand right into your skin. So when he talks about the east wind, we can think haboob or worse. So, boy, Job continues. A third chapter, holy cow. People know where to mine silver. They know where to dig iron, earth, from the earth, and how to smelt copper from rock. They know how to shine light in the darkness and explore the farthest regions of the earth as they search in the dark for ore. They sink a mine shaft into the earth, far from where anyone lives. They descend on ropes, swinging back and forth. Food has grown on the earth above, but down below the earth is melted by fire. Magma. Here the rocks contain precious, I haven't looked this up in a while, lapis lazuli. Does anyone have a note?
I believe that's blue.
It is.
Don't-
It is. It's blue, yeah.
Sapphire.
It is very, very
Stuff.
important and
Okay.
to us now.
Yeah, mine says sapphires,
That's some-
That makes sense.
same color.
It's beautiful.
And even the dust contains gold. These are treasures that no bird of prey can see. They're all under the earth. No falcon's eye can observe. No wild animal has walked upon these treasures. No lion has ever set his paw there. People are so privileged that we are able to do these things. People can do so many things. They know how to tear apart flinty rocks and overturn the roots of mountains. They cut tunnels in the rocks and uncover precious stone. Well, I got a chance to see this. I have no idea how they did it. But in one of the walled cities that we visited, we were able to actually go through one of the tunnels that was cut through the rock and walk through to the other side to the secret entrance.
Wow.
And how they, what tools they had, how they engineered it, how they got it, how they knew where to go with it. It boggles the mind, but even in Job's time, they knew this technology, this engineering, this whatever you want to call it. Amazing. They cut tunnels in the rocks and they uncover precious stones. They dam up the trickling streams and bring light to the hidden treasures. So they can do all these things. And now Job says, but do people know, even these brilliant people that can do all these remarkable things, do they know where to find wisdom? Where can they find understanding? No one knows where to find that. And then we with the audience are like, yeah, wow. I feel that way too sometimes. No one knows where to find it, for it is not found among the living. It's not here, says the ocean, nor is it here, says the sea. See, if he was trying to do this in a short time, he wouldn't have had to say that twice. The author's not trying to get it over with quickly like maybe we are. It cannot be bought with gold. It cannot be purchased with silver, wisdom. It's worth more than all the gold of Ophir, the greater than precious onyx or sapphire, lapis lazuli. Wisdom is more valuable than gold and crystal. It cannot be purchased with jewels mounted in fine gold. Coral and jasper are worthless in trying to get it. The price of wisdom is far above rubies. I mean, honestly, we get the point, but he goes on.
Well.
Precious peridot from Ethiopia cannot be changed for it. What is peridot? Anybody have?
It's a light green stone.
Okay.
It's an August first stone.
Mine says topaz.
Mine does too.
Okay.
Topaz.
It's worth more than the purest gold, but do people know where to find wisdom? Where can they find understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all humanity. Even the sharp-eyed birds of the sky cannot discover it. Destruction and death say, we've only heard rumors of where wisdom can be found. God alone understands the way of wisdom. He knows where it can be found. For God looks throughout the whole earth and sees everything under the heavens. God decided how hard the winds should blow and how much rain should fall. God made the laws for the rain and laid out a path for the lightning. Then he saw wisdom and evaluated it. God set it in place and examined it thoroughly. And this is what he says to all humanity, echoing Proverbs. The fear of the Lord is true wisdom. To forsake evil is real understanding. What an eloquent ending to that monotonous. But what he's saying to the people, he's kind of preparing them to reflect on who can really grasp God's mind fully. God's the only one that knows where wisdom is. Well, one of the things that is happening that we know in hindsight is that God's wisdom is unattainable to us, but God chooses to reveal in part some of that wisdom to us. And they had this much, and they are in transition to something greater. And so that's why we still say today, we can't fully know God. And with an agnostic, you know, if you meet somebody who says, I'm an agnostic, say, well, I am too in part. We can't fully know God. We never will. We can't contain God in our minds. But then you can say, but I know some things because God has revealed what I can know. And I don't want to miss out on trying to know that. Okay. We're on the last chapter for today. Yay! Job continued speaking for a fourth chapter. I long for the years gone by when God took care of me, when he lit up the way before me and I walked safely through the darkness. When I was in my prime, God's friendship was felt in my home. So here's a person in the dark night of the soul saying, boy, I really thought I felt it. It seemed so real. Boy, it would be nice if we could have those days back. The Almighty was still with me. And with mourning in his heart, he says, and my children were around me. My cows produced milk in abundance. My groves poured out streams of olive oil. Those were the days when I went to the city gate and took my place among the honored leaders. The young stepped aside when they saw me, and even the aged rose in respect at my coming. The princes stood in silence and put their hands over their mouths. The highest officials of the city stood quietly, holding their tongues in respect. All who heard me praised me. All who saw me spoke of me well. For I assisted the poor in their, now he's answering the accusations here, by the way. I assisted the poor in their need and the orphans who required help. When you were blessed with abundance, when you were honored in the city and had power, it wasn't for your own soaking it all in. It was, how can you bless others? Even then, I helped those without hope, and they blessed me. I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. Everything I did was honest. Righteousness covered me like a robe, and I wore it like a turban. I served as eyes for the blind and feet for the lame. I was a father to the poor and assisted strangers who needed help. I broke the jaws of the godless oppressors and plucked their victims from their teeth. So that sounds like an attorney who brings about justice. I plucked their victims from their teeth. It's just very figurative language. I thought, surely I will die, surrounded by my family after a long, good life. That's the best you could hope for. For I am like a tree whose roots reach the water. Where does that come from? Psalm 1.
Psalm, yeah.
Psalm 1, the very theology that they're talking about here. The good are like a tree planted by the river. They prosper in all things. Job says, I'm like that tree. Whose branches are refreshed with the dew. New honors are constantly bestowed on me, and my strength is constantly renewed when I'm like that. Everyone used to listen to my advice. They were silent as they waited for me to speak. And after I spoke, they had nothing to add, for my counsel satisfied them. It's kind of like a sermon from Pastor Jim. There's a hush that falls over the crowd because everyone is so satisfied. They longed for me to speak as people long for rain. They drank my words like a refreshing spring rain. I do think this chapter was written about it. When they were discouraged, I smiled at them. My look of approval was precious to them. Like a chief, I told them what to do. I lived like a king among the troops and I comforted those who mourned. Well, it's before 1 o'clock. I'm going to go on. Because Job's still talking for a fifth minute.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, you were hoping to get out, but you're not going to get away with that. So now he contrasts it. But now I am mocked by people younger than I, by young men whose fathers are not worthy to run with my sheepdog. A lot of good they are to me, these worn out wretches, Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar. They are gone with hunger and flee to the deserts, to desolate and gloomy wastelands. They pluck wild greens from among the bushes and eat from the roots of broom trees. They are driven from human society. People shout at them as if they were thieves. So now they live in frightening ravines and caves among the rocks. They sound like animals howling among the bushes, huddled together beneath the nettles. They are nameless fools, outcasts from society, and now they mock me with vulgar songs. They taunt me. They despise me and won't come near me except to spit in my face. For God has cut my bowstring. Well, if you were a bowman, You know, that was your way of sustaining yourself, to hunt or protect yourself. And if your bowstring's cut, yikes, you're vulnerable. He has humbled me, so they have thrown off all restraint. My enemies don't feel like I can do anything to them, so they come at me. These outcasts oppose me to my face. They send me sprawling and lay traps in my path. They block my road and do everything they can to destroy me. They know I have no one to help me. They come at me from all directions and jump on me when I am down. I live in terror now. My honor has blown away with the wind, and my prosperity has vanished like a cloud. And now my life seeps away. Depression haunts my days. At night, my bones are filled with pain, which gnaws at me relentlessly. Arthritis, anyone? With a strong hand, God grabs my shirt. He grips me by the collar of my coat. He has thrown me into the mud. I am nothing more than dust and ashes. I cry to you, O God, and I did now 17 chapters ago. And I stand before you and you don't even look. You have become cruel to me. You use your power to persecute me. You throw me into the whirlwind and destroy me with the storm. And I know you are sending me to my death, the destination of all who live good and bad. Answer me that one, God. Surely no one would turn against the needy when they cry for help in their trouble. I didn't, God. I helped the needy when I could help them. Why don't you help the needy when they cry to you? Did I not weep for those in trouble? Was I not deeply grieved for the needy? So I looked for good, but evil came instead. I waited for the light, but darkness fell. My heart is troubled and restless. Days of suffering torment me. I walk in gloom without sunlight. I stand in the public square and cry for help. Instead, I am considered a brother to jackals and companion to owls. My skin is turned dark and my bones burn with fever. My harp plays sad music and my flute accompanies those who weep. All right, it's at 1 o'clock. I could go on, but Job is going to continue. And we'll see where that leads. So if it seems relentless, instead of just being bored by it, say, well, did the author intend that? And if so, why? And that's a good way to examine it. Okay, comments or questions or thoughts about what we've done today or where we're going in the future?
Well, the thing is, being that this is thousands of years old, to me, nothing's changed.
We can relate.
Same old, same old.
Well, I can relate to that. There's so much of this we can say, and it just keeps repeating itself. But hopefully, in the end, we will say, well, really, there are some things that have changed. From the time that they understood and read this and what they knew at that point, I'm going to argue that our perspective has been given greater wisdom than what they had, and that they were part of that process of getting us there. So we can have a different perspective, and I will argue that at least that has changed. And we'll see if that argument holds weight. Other thoughts? Okay, there's 42 chapters, so we ought to be able to knock out the book in at least 2 weeks to finish the book, and then probably need some time to wrap up with it. So 2 or 3 sessions, we should be done.
I guess I want to say something. My perspective, because I can't believe that God would let good things happen to, or bad things happen to good people or children
Right.
and those things. So, and I always talk to Mel, you'll have to tell me when I get there, if I'm lucky enough to get there.
Mhm.
But, because I've had my brother say, I can't believe when it got like that. And I'm like, I don't believe it either, Larry. You know, I believe he's there to help us through all these things, but I just don't think he causes them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I believe that, then I don't believe that he causes it for the bad either.
But okay, he may not cause it, but he lets it happen.
I don't believe that either. I mean, that's just my.
Well, what
Yeah.
else would there be? If it's happening, it's happening.
We've reached our limits. We can't resolve it. We don't know yet. Yeah.
That's where I look at him as my heavenly father. in the same way as my father here on earth would do anything for me, but he couldn't protect me from everything. But he would be there for me afterwards, and then look at him as the same way. Maybe he can't protect me, but he will always be there for me. And God willing, I will be with him in eternity. It's like if you like.
And I second that by saying that I take a lot of comfort in Jesus' parable of the wheat and the weeds. He didn't explain other than saying enemy has done this. Because the question is, as the servants saw the weeds popping up among the wheat, they said, the master, didn't you sow good seed? Didn't you pay for the good stuff? Didn't you do the right thing? And the answer implied is absolutely. So God has, we can assume what you're assuming. And what's the explanation? Well, it's a partial explanation that's not fully satisfying. It's a way of saying there's an explanation, but you have to wait to see it resolved. He says an enemy has done this, has come in the night and sowed weeds into the wheat. Well, shall we tear up the weeds? No, can't now. It's done. You have to endure it, because if you tear up the weeds, you're going to destroy the grain. Let them grow up together and endure that, and trust that the one who sowed the good seed in the end will be able to separate, explain, and that it's not a satisfying answer because we can't control it. It's not within our power to fully figure out. And a lot of people just, if they can't have that, they feel like, what's the point of believing in God? And that I understand that. I think it's sad, but I think it's a human condition, and we can understand that, and I would bet God understands that as well.
It'd be nice just once in a while to see another miracle once in a while. More than what we have.
Every Sunday,
Your sermon.
yes.
It's gonna explode.
Well, according to the Bible, you remember the donkey that spoke, Balaam's ass. Yeah, can an ass speak?
I've talked to a couple.
A miracle happens every Sunday. Okay, enough of my foolishness. All right, so next time we will try Job 31, and we'll get as far as we can. The big wrap up will be 38 to 42. So we'll probably do 31 to 37 next time. And we'll stay stuck in the monotony, just to give you a spoiler. Although the author's going to throw in a little twist to the monotony, but it doesn't help much. Okay, may we vow together before we go. Mysterious God, I ask that you would deepen our trust in you, and I hope that we all understand that you have an understanding how difficult it is for us and for the people that we care about. There are so many people in this world, God, that have been captive to cynicism and hopelessness and despair, and not without good reason. Lord God, if you can, please help us to cling to our faith in ways that, even though we can't answer all the questions, might reach out to those people in despair and not argue against them, but come to them compassionately, that they might also be able to grow in trust in you more deeply. Lord, bless this world and its ongoing misery and self-infliction, and help us please come to that full, humble confession and trust in your love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.